بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونصلي على الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم. Welcome everyone, mashallah, we're here with a third Aqidah class. Before we start, please keep in mind that we shouldn't, especially in the sister side, there was a lot of complaint that there's students, or you can say sisters, brothers, who want to pay attention, want to take notes and listen attentively and learn something. So when there's too much noise, there's too much gupshup, gossiping going around, and kids running around, then it disturbs everyone. And this is against the etiquette of the masjid, as well as against the etiquettes of a classroom. So please keep your kids quietly next to you, and as well as please remain silent. And then we'll have our time to talk and chit chat after when we're done with the class, inshallah. So moving forward, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, I will read the first 6 lines, and the translation of the first 6 lines is on the slide. Everyone can look at the screen right now. Those who are in the group, I shared this, the PDF of this presentation in the group chat. So you can pull it up if you want that, or if you're here in the masjid, you can look at this. We have a screen behind me. So, Inna Allah Ta'ala wahidun la sharika lah. The first line, indeed Allah is one. Allama Tahawi says, and we as Muslims, we believe in this. Everyone believes in this. Allah is one. There are no partners to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. La sharika lah. Second line, wa la shay'a mithlahu. And there's nothing like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nothing like Him. We're going to explain this in details in the upcoming slides, inshallah. Then the third, وَلَا شَيْءَ يُعْجِزُهُ. There's nothing that can weaken Him. There's nothing that can weaken and make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala incapable. There's nothing that can do that. There's no one, no power, no might, nothing at all. That's the third belief. وَلَا شَيْءَ يُعْجِزُهُ. وَلَا إِلَهَ غَيْرُهُ. And there's number 4, and there's no deity, there's no one worthy of worship besides Him. Pure monotheism. Why does he repeat this? He repeats this to bring Tawheed firm in our heart. That's why in the Quran Allah keeps repeating, La ilaha illahu, La ilaha illahu, Huwa Allahu ladhi la ilaha illahu. So many places in the Quran. Why? So that Tawheed, the oneness of Allah, is firmly rooted in our hearts, and we don't doubt it even for a second. Then the 5th line is, Qadeemun bilabtida'in. Allah is Qadeem. The word Qadeem is a traditional word that is used. It's not no bid'ah. We can say it. Because I did hear some people saying, why are you using the word Qadeem? Where in the Quran Allah used the word Qadeem? So that Allah didn't use the word Qadeem, why are you calling Him Qadeem? The word Qadeem is used. And there's also mentioned in the Quran by different ones. Huwa al-awwalu wal-akhiru. Allah is the first. Qadeem means eternal. Awwal means eternal. He was the first, always there. Number 5, He will never perish nor cease to exist. Number 6, you have nothing occurs except what He wills. La wa la yakunu illa ma yuri. Only whatever Allah wills will happen. We will explain this about the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the upcoming slides. If not today, next week, inshallah. So let's start off with Tawheed first. Tawheed means wahhada yuwahhidu Tawheed. Suratul Ikhlas is called Suratul Tawheed. We did tafsir of it. That's what some brothers said it. I saw their lips. Tawheed. Tawheed means the oneness of Allah. English, monotheism. Tawheed, when we say Tawheed, we mean all 3. What is all 3? 3 types. Tawheed with that. Everyone say Tawheed with that. That means being. There's only one being, and that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, period. No other beings associated with Allah in any other way possible. Nothing. Not even close to Allah. That's Tawheed of that, the being of Allah. Number 2, Tawheed sifat, Tawheed in the attributes. Allah is one in His attributes. There's no one that is all powerful like Allah. There's no one who is eternal like Allah. That's only exclusively for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's no creator that is similar to Allah. Creator is only Allah. Khaliq is Allah. Razik is Allah. The one who does everything, it happens because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's called Tawheed and Sifat. When we say Tawheed, this is what we mean. Even in the qualities and attributes, There's no one that is like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and no one shares the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then you have Tawheed al-Af'al, very important, actions. That every action, occurrence that we see around us, everything is from Allah. There's no role of any other being but Allah causing it. Every action and any occurrence. That is called Tawheed al-Af'al. Af'al means doing. That in every action around us, every occurrence around us, the cause is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is the one who caused it. This is the meaning of Tawheed. So when we say Tawheed, Inna Allah wahid, Allah is one. Qul huwa Allahu ahad, Allah is one. La ilaha illa hu, there's no God but Allah. This is the meaning of it. Tawheed al-Dhat, Tawheed al-Sifat, and Tawheed al-Af'al. Is that clear? We'll take questions at the ending. Let's talk about the proof of Tawheed, because in our books of Aqidah, in books of theology, first it starts off by proving the existence of Allah, and then it goes into why Allah is one. So the question is, how do we prove Tawheed? Why Allah is one? Fine, we believe that there's someone who caused the entire universe, and then that cause is eternal, but then now how do we know that it's one? That the one who created everything, He's one. I mean, it's quite simple for us to understand that. It's very easy. Allah uses very easy arguments in the Quran, but over here we make it a little bit complicated. That's the job of scholars sometimes, or I should say theologians. The easiest concept, the way how they word it with all the philosophical terminologies, it becomes next level difficult. But Allah makes it very easy, which will be in the next 2 slides. Quranic ayat, the easiest argument ever. But let's go over here. For the sake of argument, we're proving that Allah is one to someone. If there were more than one God, so this is they accept the existence of God. Now, question is, how is He one? How do we know He's one? Then, if there were more than one God, let's say there were 2 or more gods, one more than one God. Now, if one wanted to cause, for example, he wanted to give death to one being, to one of his creation, and the other wanted to cause life, then there are 2 scenarios. So God A, na'udhu billah min dhalik, wants to say, I want to give him life, ruh. God B says, no, I want to give him death. I want to kill him. Doesn't say, no, I want to let him live. So there are 2 possible scenarios here, logically speaking. A, both of their wants is executed. Yani, what God A wanted and what God B wanted, both of them, yani death and being alive, they both get executed. This is logically impossible. Is it not impossible? One person cannot be alive and dead at the same time. It's impossible. So the option is out. This option is out. It's logically impossible for one being to be alive at the same time for one being to be dead. It's impossible. The second option is one of the gods' want is executed. Either God A wins or either God B wins. And then if we take this option, this proves that Allah is one, God is one. Why? Because the God that wins, that means He's the real God, He's powerful. And the one whose want or his command did not come into fruition, didn't come into reality, that means He's not God, He's weak, He lost. So this shows that God needs to be one. And this is a very strong argument mentioned in the Quran. It's mentioned all over in the books of Aqidah. Once again, if there were more than one God, let's say 2 or more, and one wanted to cause death and the other one to cause life, then there are 2 scenarios we can think of. Our mind will say, wait, there's 2 scenarios. One is, let both of their wants come to be. Second scenario, one of their wants can occur. The first is impossible. It's impossible. It's logically impossible. And the second will make the other overpowered, and any being that is overpowered, he cannot be God, because we established already that God is all-powerful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Qadir, is Qadir, is all-powerful. So logically speaking, God, Allah is one. He needs to be one, logically speaking. And then we have our Quranic proofs. But if you're speaking logically to someone, this is how you prove to him that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one. They might say, what about if they always agree? The question is, what about if they always agree, yani both God A and B always agree in their decision or in their wants, what's the response to this? Just think about it a little bit. What happens if for example, a polytheist says, no, but what about all the times both of the God, they always agree, they don't disagree? Yes.
Then that means it could be the same God.
Very good. That's impossible. That means one of them is weak. You cannot always agree. If you say they always need to agree, that means you're forcing God. And God can never be forced. Hence, we go back to one claim, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one. So that's just one question that might come up. We don't think like this. Usually, people that have some logic, they don't think like this. But people will ask this question, so we should be ready to answer them. People will ask this. There was perhaps 2 times I was asked this myself. And because we studied it, we're able to explain this to them. Where they were Hindus or people they believed in multiple gods, we're able to explain to them. The Quran is very simple in its argument. This is Surah 21, number 22. لو كان فيهما آلهة إلا الله لفسدتا. That's it. Very simple. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, because this is against shirk, polytheism. Allah says, had there been in the heavens and the earth, yani if there been in the universe multiple of gods besides Allah, then indeed the entire universe would collapse. That's the meaning of it. Because one God would be like, I want daytime. One would be, I want this. One would be, I want to destroy this entire country. One say, I want to kill this people. And then there will be nothing but chaos. But what do we see? We don't see this chaos. So that shows us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one. لو كان فيهما آلهة إلا الله لفسدتا. If there were multiple of gods, deities besides Allah, then the entire system of the heavens and the earth would have gone into disarray. Subhanallah, glory be to Allah, Rabbil Arsh, the Lord of the throne, who is far above their false description of Him. And the mushrikun used to say there are multiple of gods. Yes, we believe in Allah, but with Allah there are other gods that help Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala run the universe. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, if there were many gods, then the universe wouldn't exist. There would be nothing but fighting going on. Which one is the supreme God? You cannot have 2 kings. There's always going to be fights if you have 2 leaders. That's why you have 1 leader. That's the idea behind this. Second ayat. مَا اتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ Surah Al-Mu'minun. مَا اتَّخَذَ اللَّهُ مِنْ وَلَدٍ وَمَا كَانَ مَعَهُ مِنْ إِلَهٍ إِذًا لَذَهَبَ كُلُّ إِلَهٍ بِمَا خَلَقَ وَلَعَلَى بَعْضُهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. Nor is there any deity with Him, yani with Allah. For then every God, deity means God, would have taken His creation aside, and they would have indeed عَلَى بَعْضُهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. They would have fought one another. So if there were multiple of gods, they all created their creation, they all would have taken their creation and start fighting with one another. But this doesn't happen, and this is impossible. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Subhanallah, glory be to Allah, amma yasifun, whatever they ascribe to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are the 2 ayats in which Allah mentions the proof for Tawheed, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one. Let's go into some types of shirk. Shirk is to associate partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are 3 types. Shirk in that some people they associate partners with the being of Allah. Yani they say that there's multiple of gods that created the universe. For example, you have those Zoroastrians. This belief doesn't exist. I mean, there probably are a few groups like this, very minute group like this nowadays. They believe that the universe have 2 gods, for example. This is called shirk in the dhat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the being of Allah. Where one is the good, the God of good, God of khair, and the other one is God of shar, yani God of evil. And they gave name to them, Yazdan and Ahraman. The Christians, they're similar to this. The Christians, they're similar to this, but they claim that they're still Tawheed followers. And the Quran still called them Ahl Kitab. That's why we consider them from the people of the book, because they still claim that they believe in their book. And they still claim that they are muwahid, they follow Tawheed. But their claim and their belief right now is this, shirk fi dhat. In the being of Allah, they have added three more. There's three separate beings, and according to the Christians, all three of them are God, but they're one God, which doesn't make sense. So that's a topic that's a whole different topic. But the Christians fall under this. The belief of Trinity falls under this. Shirk in the dhat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second type of shirk is in naming other creation that God created. So naming other creation as God and calling them worthy of worship, like idols. So if you ask the mushriks at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the Arabian mushrikun at the time of the Prophet, they weren't like, oh, you know what, there's 5 main gods. They weren't like that. They believed in one Allah as the supreme God who created the universe, but at the same time they believed in other deities that Allah had partners with them after, because Allah needed help in it, whatever. So this is called shirk in naming and deeming the creation worthy of worship. This also makes a person kafir. He's out the fold of Islam. The Arabian mushrikun time of the Prophet ﷺ, you want proof for this? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Luqman, وَلَئِن سَأَلْتَهُ مَنْ خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. If you ask the mushrikun of Makkah who created the skies and the earth, لَيَقُولُنَّ اللَّهِ, they will say Allah. Even they will say Allah, because they say that Allah is the only being who created, the first being who created everything. But after that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took children, Allah took partners because He needed help and whatnot. This is also shirk. This also makes a person out of the fold of Islam, thinking that the makhluk is worthy of worship. That's why sajda to creation is haram. Sajda to beings is haram. If anyone says, any peer says, any righteous person says, do sajda to me in your whatever, this is shirk, it's haram. If a person does it with the intention that he's worthy of sajda, he's at the fold of Islam. But if he does it because of respect and honor, whatnot, then it's haram, guna kabira. وَلَئِن سَأَلْتَهُ مَنْ خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ. If you were to ask them who created the skies and the earth, they would respond, Allah. قُلِ الْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ بَلْ أَكْثَرُهُمْ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. So this is the second type of shirk, which we have to be careful. Alhamdulillah, we don't. But anyone who has this type of belief that maybe this deity or maybe this idol or maybe this individual is worthy of worship, let me do sajda to him, to his qabr, for example. Let me do sajda to his qabr, thinking he's worthy of worship. Thinking he's worthy of worship. And if you think he's worthy of worship, you're saying that he's Allah, na'udhu billah min dhalik. So then that makes a person out the fold of Islam. If a person wants to worship qabr, and he does the sajda because of honor, you can't call him kafir, but it's guna kabira. He's misguided, he's sinful. So be very careful when you're labeling people. And by the way, let me give you the good news. The good news is takfir is not your job. Calling someone kafir is not your job. So don't call anyone kafir. Awamun nas, they love calling kafirs. The people, especially on YouTube and general masses, the non-ulama, they love the takfir gun, where they like shooting everyone with the kufr gun. Everyone is kafir. So this is not our job, and it's very sinful for us to call anyone kafir, because especially if you don't know, if he's actually not a kafir. So it's not your job. It's the job of the muftis and the scholars to sit down, think about his belief, confirm the belief, then you can say whether he's a Muslim or not. So there's a whole criteria for this. Let's move on. That's the second type of shirk. Then you have the third type of shirk, shirk in sifat, in attributes. Yani giving human attributes to Allah. Giving human attributes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There was a group, a very famous group. Some ideology of this group exists today, but in different wordings. We have to be careful with that. They were called the Mujassima, the anthropomorphist sect. The anthropomorphism. Anthropomorphism. Anthro means human, And then morphe, it means form. So when you're giving human form to Allah, this is shirk. Anyone who believes in this, even utters this and believes in this, that person is not a Muslim. That's shirk in the attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is this? There were a group of, they called themselves Muslims. They might still exist, wallahu alam. I've not come across anyone. Actually, there was once someone messaged me, one of my friends. He said that his cousin is confused. That he's actually thinks that na'udhu billah, God has a body like we have a body, but it's just big. Now this falls under shirk. That makes a person out of the fold of Islam. If they're confused, we help them. But if they actually believe in that, you can't say he's a Muslim. So we have to be careful with this. The Mujassima sect, the anthropomorphist sect, they attributed a shape and body to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the people that say Allah has hands, for example, people that you have to be careful with your wordings, brothers. Allah has hand, but not like our hand. Even saying that is problematic. So when you ask them, what do you mean Allah has hands? They're Muslims. Talking about a group, if someone says this, they believe in the Quran, they're Muslims. Allah has hand. Allah has hand. That's problematic. You can't say that. When you say hand, by definition, you're talking about a limb. And if you attribute a limb to Allah, it's shirk. But the brother says, not like our hands. So you're saying that I don't believe in hand, but there's a contradiction. You have to change the way how you phrase your sentence. It's either you believe that Allah has a hand, na'udhu billah min dhalik. It's either you don't believe in it. Which one is it? And then that's where they get confused. You have to be very careful with the way how you phrase these. I'm going to tell you the principle about this in the next slide, inshallah. أَمْ لَهُمْ إِلَهٌ غَيْرُ اللَّهِ Subhanallah amma yushrikun. Do they really have gods besides Allah? Allah is far above anything they ascribe to Him. Important principle. Now, the question does come. I know some of you are thinking. In the hadith, the Prophet said, Yadullahi ala al-jama'ah. Yad in Arabic means hand, for example. In the Quran, يَوْمَ يُكْشَفُ عَنْ سَاقٍ. Saq means shin. In another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, God has a hand. I mean, that's why we don't like the English translation hand. Well, let's use the word yad, Arabic word yad that has been used in the hadith yad. And both of them are right. Both of them are right. What does that even mean? 100% right away, a Muslim has to deny the linguistic meaning. Linguistic meaning, dictionary meaning. We deny the dictionary meaning of yad. What's the dictionary meaning of yad? Hand. But what do we believe in? We believe that the word yad, only Allah knows best what it means. We consign the meaning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We take the meaning of yad, we take the meaning of these type of ayats, and we say Allah knows best what it means. But what do we do for sure? Everyone say it. We deny the linguistic meaning of it. If you believe in the linguistic meaning, we can't call ourselves Muslims. You fall under the Mujassima sect, this sect over here. This is why they were so confused. They took the literal meaning so much that they went out of the fold of Islam. But once again, the Quran, when you study deen comprehensively, you will not go out the fold of Islam. Why do I say this? Why? Listen to this, what I've put over here. The most important, you can take a picture of this, memorize this. Very important principle. All the verses in the Quran and Sunnah that apparently, to you it looks like that because that's what it looks like to us, gives the notion, yani the meaning, that there is a resemblance of Allah to His creation is explained by these verses. Allah has explained this already for us. So when you look at these verses, you have to always keep these two verses in mind, which will explain all of these other verses that might seem to give body and limbs to Allah. What are these two verses? I put it over here in red. Laysa, say it everyone, Laysa kamithlihi shay wa huwa as-sami'ul basir. The main thing is right here, Laysa kamithlihi shay. 1, 2, 3. Nothing is like Him. Khalas. Allah has said it, there's nothing like Allah. And nothing like Allah. So now Allah is telling us there's nothing like Him. So when Allah does use the word yad, for example, or Allah does use istawa ala al-arsh, Allah has, gone upon the arsh, for example, has established on His throne. Allah is telling us for sure there's no anthropomorphistic meanings. Don't attribute this to me. لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٌ. So what does it mean? You either consign, leave the meaning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's mutashabihat. Allah knows best what it means. Or you can interpret it. You can give a possible interpretation that exists in the Arabic language. You can go either two ways. The safest is Allah knows best what it means. But because of the Mujassima sect, because of the Mujassima group, they were causing confusion. People, awam, they weren't understanding. The ulama was like, you know what? Let's give interpretation of it, proper interpretation. For example, yad. In Arabic, they use the word yad for power. When you say, I have with me yad, what does that mean? You have with you your power, your group is with you. When these different type of things that I mentioned. When Allah says, istawa ala al-arsh, in Arabic, when you say istawa ala al-arsh, He established Himself on the chair, on the throne. That means He's dominant over the country. This is used in Arabic. When you say the king istawa ala al-arsh, that means He conquered the country. So you have these potential meanings of it, and Allah is telling us you cannot take the linguistic meaning. So the possibility of interpretation is there, but at the end, we all agree, we deny the linguistic and any anthropomorphistic conception of God. We deny this. This is not what Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah believe in. This is what Abu Hanifa, his companions, the four Imams, Ash'ari, Maturidi, Hanabila, Atharis, we all believe in this. This is what Sunni Islam believes in. And the second ayat is right here. The most famous ayat, you can always remember. I didn't even give the reference. Where is this ayat? Anyone knows? Where is this ayat? I mean, there's no harakat. I mean, yes, Surah Ikhlas. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. There's no one comparable to Him. There's nothing like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nothing equal to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So today we'll end off with this. And we'll continue on from here, inshallah, next week. It's a very important principle. If anyone has any questions, please ask me your questions. And then we can munch on the samosas and chais, inshallah.
So that's the word of shirk, right? And I'm looking at the India. Sometimes they stop you and they make you say something which is the word of their word of God, like say Jai this or this, right? So if you are asked to say forcefully those words, what happens?
This is answered. The question is, so the sisters can know the question as well. One brother asked that in India, sometimes they force you to say the Indian gods' names and perhaps even praise them. So what happens to a person's iman? The answer is, Allah answered this in the Quran. When a person is forced, ukriha al kufr, when a person is forced to do kufr, he has a gun on him, someone's about to beat him, someone's about to rob him, someone's about to throw his kid in the fire, for example, and a person was to say the words of kufr to save his life, while his heart mutma'innun bil iman, his heart is filled with iman, no problem. Matter of fact, you can do that. Sahaba did this. One companion, they took his head, Khabab radiallahu anhu, and they put it inside. Say that you curse the God of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allah, curse him. So they tortured him so much, out of extreme pain. He said what they said. And then they released him laughing. Look, you became a kafir. You're not a Muslim. He started crying, radiallahu anhu. And then Allah saw this and Allah revealed right away to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when a person is forced on kufr, but his heart is filled with iman like the Sahabi. He's loved as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He kept on crying, he wasn't coming out of his house. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told him the ayat and he got happy. Allah said he is mutma'innun bil iman. His heart is filled with iman. Then the person is obviously forgiven. So Islam comes to protect your nafs, protect your body, protect your life. So that's why deen is here. Like the belief is here. So when there's a contradiction outwardly, you have to protect your life. And Islam wants that.
So, I think on the second slide you had action.
Yes.
My question is, if a Muslim brother kills another Muslim with bad intention, Does it happen with Allah's will?
That's a very good question. Every occurrence happens with Allah's permission, with Allah allowing it. When it's called tawfiq, there's the opposite word when something is a sin. So we don't use the word tawfiq for that. There's a different word that is used for that. So everything that happens with the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah allows it. There's a difference between willing it and the difference between being happy with it. Not everything Allah wills is what Allah wants for us. Yani Allah loves for us to do. Once again, not everything Allah wills, Allah creates, Allah allows that Allah becomes happy with. For example, kufr. There's people that will choose kufr, and Allah will allow that because they chose kufr. But that doesn't make Allah happy, because iman makes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala happy. So everything happens with the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, every single thing. And one of the slides is going to come in the upcoming durus where Imam Tahawi is going to mention everything happens with the will of Allah. Ma sha'a yakun wa ma lam yasha lam yakun. Whatever Allah wants happens, whatever Allah doesn't want doesn't happen. To us it might be evil and bad. Even if it's evil, wal qadar khayrihi wa sharrihi min Allah. Qadar, the good of it, the bad, everything happens from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah allows it. But does that mean is He happy with the person doing kufr? No. وَلَا يَرْضَى لِعِبَادِهِ الْكُفْرِ. Allah says He's not happy for His servants to commit kufr. He's not happy with that. But He creates everything. Allah allows it. Any other questions? Yes.
Jazakumullah khair. This is a very nice topic. I think you ended with with ayah Surah Ikhlas, which is a very important surah. And I was surprised why you didn't begin with it in terms of the oneness of Allah, because the whole surah is about the oneness of Allah. Like it just cuts it clear cut.
Very good. Very good. One of the it's a question. One brother is saying, why didn't I write the entire Surah Al-Ikhlas? To be honest, I didn't have any time. There was no time. So I tried making it short as possible and tried putting all of this together. I literally did this in like 2-3 hours right before coming. Whereas the schedule is so busy and it takes a long time. 2-3 hours on this to sit there, put everything together. So the slides I'm giving out for free, but it takes a lot of efforts to make this. And people that make slides, collecting the info and then putting it over here, it takes time. So there might be some ayat and some stuff that I don't mention because it's so famous that you already know. And also we went over it in tafsir class. I'm not sure if you were attending the tafsir class. We did tafsir of Surah Al-Ikhlas. It's on Al-Baqi YouTube channel. You can go and check out tafsir of Surah Al-Ikhlas. We explained the details of Surah Al-Ikhlas, Surah Al-Tawheed. It's called Surah Al-Tawheed. We did that already. But very good question. So it's not intentional. Actually, you can say it's for brevity, for the sake of ikhtisar. It's like ulama, when you read books, they write a bit of an ayat that they need as a proof, but they don't quote the whole ayat. They just put ila akhiri. Hamza lam kha means ila akhiri, till the end of the ayat. Because sometimes you write fast, so you have to finish quick. Let's take 1-2 more questions and we'll end off with it. Yes.
That was deny the linguistic meaning.
Yes.
Because it contradicts this
ayat.
So you mentioned that there are people who say Allah has a hand, but it's not like any other hand. So how would that contradict this?
The reason why it contradicts is because when you say Allah has a hand, logically speaking, you are attributing a limb to Allah. Then you're just negating the size of it. What are you negating after? Not like our hand. Okay, not like our hand. What does that even mean? What do you mean by that? So you have to clarify with that brother. If he says what I mean by this is, it's a whole thing that we don't know. We're pretty much just say this, Allah knows best. That's it, to say that. You don't have to go around and say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a hand and it's not like our hand. Because you're going to confuse the masses. When you say hand, automatically what's the first thing we think of linguistic meaning? So just say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best what it means. Or give a suitable interpretation. Within the Arabic language, there's 3 criteria. There are 3 things for you to give suitable interpretation, but that's a whole different class for advanced students. So, yeah. There's a question from the sister side. Is prostrating at shrines considered second type of shirk? That's a good question. Doing sajda to qabr is prostrating at shrines considered second type of shirk? When you do sajda to maybe qabrs, maybe to idols and whatnot, to people, I mentioned this already, if a person does this for worship, and that's usually the case, to worship, thinking he is God, or that individual, that thing is God, yes, this is shirk, and that it takes a person out the fold of Islam. If a person does so not knowing why he's doing it, because you have Shias nowadays, they don't believe, or they don't even know why they're Shias, for example. They don't curse Abu Bakr. They don't believe that the Quran is, for example, incomplete, or half a majority of it is eaten by a goat, for example. So they don't believe in that. They just call themselves Shias because why? My father said he's Shia. You have people like that. That's why don't take the kufr word and start throwing it at people. But to answer this question at face value, anyone who does sajda and he does sajda to worship that individual, it's against Iman.
So with this, in connecting to that question, if somebody asks you a counter that in Quran, Yusuf alayhi salam, the parents and they do sajda to him.
A very good question. One of the asks that in the Quran, in the dream of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, and even afterwards, the parents of Yusuf did sajda to Yusuf. That's a very good question. In the Shariat of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, sajda of respect was allowed. Sajda of respect was allowed. In Shariat Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, sajda for respect and honor is haram. It's not kufr, it's haram. That's why I keep saying this. You understand the distinction I'm trying to make? So if a person, God forbid, does sajda to his father out of respect, haram act, we wouldn't make him a kafir. But at the time of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, Allah allowed it. Allah allowed it. But in the Shariat of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, why? Allah does what He wants. Allah does what He wants.
One more side connection. So when sometimes out of respect you go down and give both or to your parents' hands or to people who are elderly, is that allowed then?
No, one is you bend a little bit or you want to hug, maybe someone is short. But one is you do it formally, as in like you bow down to people like this. It wouldn't be allowed. It's makruh to do that to people or to do sajda to people. You understand? So we have to be careful with this. Before I take another question, let's answer the second question from the sister's side, and then perhaps we'll take one more from here. The second question from the sister is, why are there differences in Aqidah in the Sunni madhabs? That's a very good question. There are no differences within the Sunni Islam when it comes to the major beliefs. There's no difference. There's some differences in like I mentioned previously in my previous classes, in some philosophical interpretation, there are differences. Sometimes when we talk about them, we're just like, what? Is that even a difference? We don't even need to know them. There's certain groups who, for example, you have the Salafi movement. They claim, or the majority of their movement, they say they're following the Aqidah of Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, rahimahullah. So they're very close to the Hanbali or the Athari creed. But in this issue, for example, of hand, right? They are wrong in their interpretation, or they're wrong in their wordings, and they know, and that's why nowadays they're retracting from it. The way how they phrase it, for example, to say Allah has a hand, but not like our hand. That's a wrong phrase to say. But they for sure do not mean what the Mujassima meant. So no one can say that the Salafis are kuffar, for example. They're the anthropomorphists of our zamana. You can't say this. Why? Because they don't believe that the literal linguistic meaning belongs to Allah. They don't believe in that. That's why they say the second part, not like our hand. But that's what we tell them, don't even phrase it like this. You're confusing people. If a person actually does believe in that, then he is at the fold of Islam. If a person does. But there are certain groups amongst this group that might actually believe in this. So it won't take a person out the fold of Islam.
But the ulama of some of the Salafi, if you go back to Sheikh bin Baz, Uthaymeen, and their senior ulama, there's some that actually in the bayans.
That's the thing though. But this is why we can't. That's why we say these statements are misguidance, but they're not kufr. Why? Why can't we say that? You guys tell me the principle. Why can't we say it's kufr? That's not for us to judge, but why? Why can't we judge? Because they have statements saying Subhanallah, Amma yushrikun. They saying Allah is free from associating partners to Him. They believe in these ideas, but when it comes to the specific topic of yad, their phrases gives you a confused. That's why it gets confusing. So when you look at multiple of other reasons, it shows you that they don't believe in it. But then over here they're saying that they believe in it. So we can't say kufr, but it's misguidance. And then many of them they don't phrase it like that anymore, because the thing is this group denied philosophical discussions. So that's where they get caught up. When you don't train yourself in philosophy and you talk about philosophical concepts, you end up getting stuck when you don't get some training. So khair, whatever the reasons are, but we can do takfir.
Just a small explanation.
Yeah.
Because we have one hadith that about the azan. If somebody do azan, the yad of Allah, he's under the yad of Allah. But so that we mostly, like you said, we imagine, we know, because this is our mafkura or our mind. We only know this hand.
Yeah.
We don't know another kind of hand. So if somebody said you are on the eyes of the camera, so the camera see everything around here in the masjid, but you can show where is the eyes of the camera. The camera have no eyes.
Yes.
But they can see us.
Yeah. So the brother over here, Ajisab, is explaining this one idea of interpretation, so that you can't interpret. You don't have to take the linguistic. You don't take the linguistic meaning, but you can interpret, and you give the example of camera with that. We can end off, or we take more questions. Yeah, Allah. When you open up this topic, there's going to be questions upon questions. Maybe the brothers can start getting shy and then I answer questions. Maybe let me answer sisters, because I've answered too many brothers.
I can ask you.
Okay. Take it. More questions from the brother side, you have to give me $5. Every question, $10, inshallah.
If we can open up the WhatsApp group and charge $10 for questions.
Okay, that's a good idea. Is it advised to steer clear from Wahhabis? Aqidah, if you're Hanafi or vice versa, to stick with Masajid people. It's very important that you do not, when it comes to Aqidah, that you stick to your own. But sometimes at work and in America, we have mixed community. You have to make sure you get along with all of them, because at the end of the day, they're your brothers. So if they're from the Salafi sect and they're not attacking you, they're the Wahhabi sect, they're not fighting you, or they're from, for example, the Brahmi group or not, and you're able to get along with them, that's great for unity reason. But we have to be very clear with our beliefs. We don't compromise our beliefs. Whether I'm with an atheist, whether I'm with a kafir, or whether I'm with a person that has wrong beliefs in Islam, or they go astray in 1, 2, 3 beliefs. We have to be clear about our beliefs. But if you do meet them, say salam. If they do come, welcome them. If they're your neighbors, give them food, halal food.
I'm so sorry.
Yes.
Can I ask one question?
Yes.
Some people have this down as well. So, you mentioned, is it the act of sajda, or are the acts where you're putting X person at the same level as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? By that I mean, if you go to Medina, you see a lot of people, especially from some continent, they're making dua, facing the Prophet's grave. So again, the question is, when you use the example of sajda, is it the actual act of sajda, or is it putting somebody at a level of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doing those things?
That's a very good question. Is it the act of sajda, or is it putting people at a position that they're like Allah? Or it can be both. It just depends on the scenario. When people do dua, for example, facing the Kaaba, that's because we're supposed to face the Kaaba. People, they make dua around the qabr of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is because sometimes they feel as if the Prophet ﷺ, that the body of the Anbiya are not eaten. And then they're able to hear your durood sharif. When you say durood sharif, there's authentic narrations about this. So people actually do that. That's a different thing. But generically speaking, if a person does act of worship, and let's say a person does worship ibadat, and he doesn't believe that the person is worthy of worship, but he does it, we don't even know why he's doing it, that'll be between him and Allah. Outwardly, it looks like he's at the fold of Islam, because sajda is done for worship. That's why. Khair, jazakumullah khairan everyone.